Council meeting tonight. We'll go ahead and call the council meeting to order. Mary Jo, can you call the roll?
Kathy Pucci?
Here.
Aaron Borowski?
Here.
Kevin Tansky?
Here.
Sue Grodick?
She is absent this evening, excused.
Ron Van Kirk?
Here.
Meg Ryan Shaki?
Here.
Andy Selhertz?
Here. Would you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. At this time, I'll pass it over to Mrs. Pucci for this evening's opening.
Thank you. If we could please observe a moment of silence in memory of former Councilwoman Deb Tomusko, who passed away about not quite a week and a half ago. Thank you.
The first item on our agenda this evening is our minutes from our meeting in February the 28th. Are there any additional comments or questions regarding these minutes?
Move to approve.
To approve the February 28th minutes. Kathy Pucci?
Yes.
Aaron Borowski?
Yes.
Kevin Tansky?
Yes.
Ron Van Kirk?
Yes.
Meg Ryan Shaki?
Yes.
Andy Selhertz?
Yes. Right, we also have minutes from our last meeting, March the 14th. Are there any additional comments or questions on these? Right, move to approve.
Second. To approve the minutes of March 14th. Kathy Pucci?
Yes.
Aaron Borowski?
Yes.
Kevin Tansky?
Yes.
Ron Van Kirk?
Yes.
Meg Ryan Shaki?
Yes.
Andy Selhertz?
Yes. At this time, we'll have the public session. If anyone in the audience has anything to say for the good and welfare of the city of Brooklyn, please step forward, state your name and address, and you'll be recognized. Please remember to keep your comments to 5 minutes or fewer.
Kelly Crawl, 10523 Manoa Avenue. First, I want to say that I am speaking on my own behalf as a resident and homeowner in Brooklyn. It has been implied that my previous address to council was under the direction or coercion of other residents, and that was not true. I had decided to speak after watching the February 7th zoning meeting prior to receiving any literature. Having a former Marine ex-cop father, my sisters and I were raised to be strong, self-sufficient women who stood up for ourselves and spoke what's on our mind, and I am fighting my own battle and no one else's. After the last meeting on March 14th, I did what you instructed and went over all the zoning resources. I skimmed through the 148-page master plan, went through the zoning website, read over the Phase 1 meeting presentation from July 20th, watched the Phase 2 presentation from October 26th, and watched again the February 7th presentation in the last 3 council meetings, and I still have concerns. The zoning project is said to be a 14-month process beginning in June 2021 and completing in July 2022. However, it wasn't until 9 months later during the February 7th meeting that rezoning of specific residential property was brought to the public as areas of further discussion. There is a possibility that I missed the original discussion and all the cramming I did over the last 2 weeks, but I am interested and would like to see the meeting that included this. I also looked over the spring newsletter, and while I do not remember receiving a fall newsletter, I attempted to locate one and any sign of one online has been removed from the city website. So I do apologize, I do not recall any notice of the kickoff meetings for this project and that I don't follow Facebook faithfully. I did receive the spring newsletter, and unfortunately the information regarding the zoning is no more informative than the website itself. It lays out the phases of the project and highlights the value residents have for park and open spaces. There is nothing in the newsletter to indicate to residents that this project may directly affect their property. Therefore, it is taken as face value that the city is reviewing its current zoning with confidence that they are doing what's best for everyone. Council has stated that they want input and feedback from residents, but how can you expect proper input when the affected residents aren't even aware that there are discussions happening outside the typical areas of public facilities and green space? If the letter I receive is misleading, then the city should have got in front of it. Meeting with 15 out of 44 residents isn't enough, especially when you are speaking to children or non-homeowners. How can you expect feedback from the public when concerns are raised in the proper forum and the response is the same condescending go to the website? I have never stated that council was holding meetings secretly, but I do earnestly believe that there could have been more transparency. I understand the intention was to not induce panic, but unfortunately it has. I still have neighbors that don't understand what is going on. Maybe some residents are satisfied waiting until June for a decision, but I am unwilling to just wait and see. Since learning of the possible zoning changes, I have spent many sleepless nights thinking about the next steps for my future. Do I try and sell my house? Do I put money into my house and stay as long as I can? What happens if I buy a new house and can't sell my old house? Amazon is really making it hard to want to stay. After the February 28th meeting, the mayor and I had a conversation where I admitted that I would not buy my house now in its current environment. So what happens if there just aren't buyers, residential or commercial? I do understand the possibility of nothing happening for years and years, but please put yourself in our shoes. The uncertainty is unbearable. This is the home I bought on my own as a single mother, the home where I raised my son. Mr. Van Kirk, you facetiously mentioned that this doesn't affect you, but tell me, if it were your side of Manoa being discussed, what steps would you be taking? What questions would you be asking, and what sources would you be using to gain knowledge to make an informed decision? Would you be satisfied waiting months for any further discussion or decision to be made? Like I said before, I'm all for growth in the city and I do not have immediate plans of leaving Brooklyn, but as a resident, I ask, when you make the decision about zoning, in addition to doing what's best for the city, please keep the affected residents in mind. If you do decide to rezone, please be certain to give the residents the tools necessary to fully understand what rezoning to light industrial will mean. Lastly, Mr. Borowski stated at the last meeting that we had spoken, and you shared my sentiments on quite a few things, including that the school and city need to do better to work together, as a strong school system will attract more families, thus making our city strong. But not a week later did Mrs. Borowski stand up here and rebuke a school board member over an issue that she made personal. I found that to be petty and inappropriate at a city council meeting. These behaviors are what dominate the actual matters at hand, pushing the real issues away from the spotlight. And hopefully my speaking here today will open our eyes to the important things in front of us, building up our community and our schools together. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, we'll now move on with reports of committees. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, just me. I didn't write nothing down because you all know who I am. I just wondered the status of Don Neal, Miss Katie.
Please
What's
state
your
your name
status?
and address.
Don McMahon, 9515 Memphis. I want to know the status of Don Neal. What is she still working this building that I'm in? Because I'm coming to every meeting to find out her status, how she's doing nowadays, and who paid for the $6,600. Did it come out of your pocket or the good people in Brooklyn? Or are you still just wasting everybody's money and time? This man said he couldn't get his fire truck down my place on Associate over there. He don't take it out anyway. I'm appalled at the way you're treating the city and the people in it. Put some cameras in, get our dispatch back, get it together. You're not getting it together. Do something with Don Neal. I'll see you at the next meeting. I want to know some answers. Thank you. It's good to see you, clowns.
Anyone else? All right, first committee report is the committee of the whole. We did meet this evening just prior to the start of our council meeting. We opened up the meeting with the group from our City Center project from Bowen, GPD, and Panzeca. We're all here to answer some questions in regards to Resolution 2022-12, and this is some cost increases or overages from the City Center project, and the overall costs are just under $700,000 increases, dealing with furniture, some drawings, and some various other items that are, everything is on board docs. And as Tom mentioned in his report, and he'll give a further report here in the council meeting, this does not affect the overall budget, as we will have, these costs will be utilized either by the sewer district cost sharing plan, as well as the contingencies that are already built into the GMP. And so they were here for that discussion, and I spent quite a bit of time going through those, answering questions. Ordinance 2022-6 is on second reading, but hope to pass by suspension of rules this evening. And this is to update the administrative provisions and regulations in regards to the building department. We discussed this at the last council meeting. Ordinance 2022-7, this authorizes the mayor to sell a piece of property off of Rodone Road, parcel 43221-038, to the West Creek Conservancy from the City of Brooklyn Land Bank property. And it's a piece of property, the creek runs through it, it's a cliff on both sides, but this will be added to their bank of property. They're trying to preserve the creek, now to go to the West Creek Conservancy. That's on second reading. Ordinance 2022-8, amending section 133.03 moral claims of the ordinances of our city. We had a lengthy discussion about this at the last committee of the whole meeting, and this would allow for individuals to be made whole for their insurance deductibles, basically, should they be involved in some type of accident with our emergency personnel. On first reading this evening under new legislation is Resolution 2022-10. This is an agreement to allow the county to operate a public utility here in our city pursuant to its powers under the state of Ohio and established by the Cuyahoga County government. Mr. Foley, the Sustainability Director for the county, was here prior to our last Committee of the Whole meeting for a public safety meeting and discussed this at length. We did not have much time to discuss this in the Committee of the Whole meeting. We plan on doing so in the future. That is on first reading. Resolution 2022-11. This authorizes the mayor to enter an agreement with Simvey to provide the IT services for the city of Brooklyn at a monthly cost of just $7,916.50. This is no increase from the last contract. Resolution 2022-12, to hope to pass by suspension of the rules. This is approving the construction budget, as I just mentioned at the beginning of my report, in regards to the City Center project. Ordinance 2022-9 is on first reading. This establishes the One Ohio opioid litigation settlement. The city of Brooklyn, there's been some funds as a result of the One Ohio litigation. I believe it's just under, if I remember correctly, under $30,000 that the city will be receiving. This ordinance establishes a fund for us to be able to receive those and then spend those funds in accordance with helping out with the opioid crisis here in the city. And then lastly is Ordinance 2022-10. This authorizes and updates the capital improvement plan. The service department would like to the building department would like to upgrade their software and switch to a new company, and this is at a cost of $21,600. Our building commissioner went over in detail in the committee of the whole meeting what this entails. It will be much more user-friendly for not only the city, but also for the residents and the contractors as they seek to obtain permits for different projects around the city. That is all our legislation. Prior to the end of our meeting, we got our update from our Recreation Commission in regard to the rec center roof over the pool. And we should have some, right now the pool is closed out of safety concerns. We should have some more answers in the next week or two about the solution to that. And a best case scenario, according to the Recreation Commissioner, is the pool will be closed through the end of April. At best, if we're able to make the repairs that we think we can make, but we won't know that for another week or so. But stay tuned, we'll continue updating as more information becomes available. The Committee of the Whole meeting does take place at 6:15 prior to the start of all council meetings. All are welcome to attend. We'll now move on with our Recreation Board. Councilman Tansky.
Thank you. This year's Spring Easter Egg Hunt and Library Story Walk will be held on Saturday, April 9th for kids ages 6 and under. Sign in at the Brooklyn Senior Center at 10:30 a.m. The egg hunt begins at 11 a.m. at Veterans Park. Bring your Easter baskets. The Easter Bunny will be available for photos. Bring your cameras. Visit www.brooklynrec.com to register. The next Recreation Board meeting will be held on April 18th in the Rec Center meeting room at 7 p.m. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Next up is the Board of Zoning Appeals. Commissioner Hurst. Oh, I can do it. I forgot to mention that to you. We normally do those, but that's fine. The Board of Zoning Appeals meeting took place on March the 17th and approved the following requests. A request from Frank and Carolina Wolter for a variance from 14.6, the required 35-foot rear depth for the proposed addition at 4076 Apple Creek Drive. Then another request from the same individuals for a 2.55% variance, the allowable maximum lot coverage of 25% for that same addition at 4076 Apple Creek Drive. The next Board of Zoning meeting will take place on April 21st at 6 p.m. right here in Council Chambers. I will now move on to our School Board Liaison, Councilman Pucci.
Thank you. Good evening. I attended the school board meeting, which took place on Wednesday, March 16th. The student spotlight was the Ohio Arts Education Youth Art Show, of which we had numerous students participate. The superintendent thanked the City of Brooklyn, Service Director Verba, and the Service Department for their cooperation on all the weather issues, and also the good communication on when we would be clearing the sidewalks for our students. He also thanked Rec Commissioner Abruzzi for his work on the youth sports and also the summer camp. Dr. Caleres presented the information that was previously presented at the first meeting in March relating to the school's budget. He reviewed the infrastructure and capital improvements that the schools have made since the spring of 2020, which totaled $638,000. According to the 5-year forecast, they will need either new money or a permanent improvement levy. He stressed that they would want to accomplish as much as possible internally before asking for additional funds from the voters. He again reviewed the levy cycles and some possible options, which include the possibility to combine some of the renewals together to reduce the number of times that they have to be on the ballot. This will be explained again at the April 5th meeting, which is a work session. The PowerPoint presentation on all this is available on the school's board docs page. They approved minutes from March 1st, the financial statements from February. On second reading, they adopted various policies relating to weapons, grant funds, cost principles, spending federal funds, procurement, federal grants and funds, use of credit cards, weapons and food services. And all of these policies, if anyone is interested, is available on board docs. They entered into an agreement with Floor King to replace carpet in the auditorium and 2 classrooms, which is being facilitated through some grant funds. They authorized the superintendent to enter an agreement with Professional Roofing Services to perform roof repairs, and there were some various areas listed, and this is for the 2021-22 school year, and they are able to use some grant funds for that as well. They authorized an agreement with Cardinal Bus Sales and Service to purchase 3 school buses for $263,000. $135,000 of this is grant money. They approved a contract for a Director of Systems and Instructional Technology for the 2022-2023 school year, along with a transitional allowance of 5 days for there to be a good transition. Approved unpaid leave of absence for a playground monitor, amended a supplemental coaching agreement, approved a resignation of a coach, a resignation of a classified employee, and they approved the engagement of LGS for the gap conversion not to exceed $12,060. They approved a transfer of $50,000 from the general fund to the permanent improvement fund, which is for the concession stand, pavilion renovation, and stadium improvements. There was a brief discussion of the state treasurer's open checkbook program, and the schools are waiting to see what the next steps on this will be. There was a brief discussion of a board resolution to support the addition of, quote, parental right to know plank to the 2022 Ohio School Board Association legislative platform. This will be discussed in more detail at the May 3rd meeting when their attorney who wrote the resolution will be in attendance. They did agree to change the starting time for the school board meeting on May 17th to 5 p.m. because that is the senior awards night, which begins at 7. Their next meeting is a work session, April 5th, 6 p.m. in the Treasurer's Conference Room. And then the next regular meeting is April 19th, 6 p.m., room 173. These are all public meetings anyone can attend. I do have a very important reminder that the Hurricane Town Hall update is scheduled for Wednesday, April 6th, from 6 to 7 p.m., room 173. And for those who cannot make it, this will also be live streamed. And that completes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. The Planning Commission's next meeting will take place on April the 6th to hear the following requests. A request from WD Partners for a preliminary site plan approval for an 8,300 square foot expansion for Walmart at 10,000 Brook Park Road. Then a request from Zeisler Morgan Properties for a preliminary site plan approval for a drive-through expansion for Dunkin' Donuts at 4740 Ridge Road. And again, that meeting takes place on April the 6th. That is all we have for committees, commissions, and boards. We'll now move on with reports of council. We begin this evening with Mrs. Pucci.
Thank you. Good evening. Sadly, as I mentioned earlier, former Councilwoman Deborah Tomusko did pass away on March 18th. Many residents are not aware of the depth of her expertise and her vast accomplishments. Deb had strong opinions, and as Father Mike said, she could be feisty at times. But one thing she never did, and that was she never really talked about her vast accomplishments. So I just wanted to touch on some of them because there's way too many to mention. The first is she was first in her class when she graduated from Brooklyn, and she then entered the GMI, General Motors Institute, which at one time was referred to as the West Point of the automobile industry. The Institute focused on creating business and industry leaders through the unique co-op model. She received her Bachelor's of Science in Mechanical Engineering. She was the very first female student body president, and she was also editor of the newspaper. And this was back in the 70s when, you know, there's a lot of talk now about STEM and trying to encourage women to go into STEM. This is when there were not very many women in this field. GM then went on to send her to Harvard Business School to get her MBA, where she specialized in strategy and operations management. From there, she was recruited to NUMMI, which was a historic GM Toyota joint venture that was created to revolutionize the auto industry. She worked within assembly plants as engineering and manufacturing lead personnel and consulted with the GM managers worldwide to implement the lean management, both technical and cultural change issues. From there, she was assigned to Lordstown, which at the time was in danger of closing, and it was their most challenging plant, and they were able to avoid closure and end up being chosen to produce a new small car line. She went on to serve in corporate engineering, and after 1 month of membership on a team, was selected to lead the engineering team, and the results decreased engineering complexity, reduced the number of parts, and cut design time with overall cost savings of over $155 million. Then she was recruited by Saturn because of her knowledge of GM operations, credibility, and innovative management style. She led Saturn's future business and product planning. After 24 years with General Motors, she then left for a different industry and was able to turn a business around from losing money to within 6 years making $29 million, and 2 years later making $174 million. Her mom became sick, which is when she returned to Brooklyn, and she was able to take an early retirement to stay here and take care of her mom. After her mom passed away, she still wanted to be able to give back and share her experience and expertise, so she took on a position of Associate Director of Manufacturing with WireNet, and she was able to use her business expertise to provide consulting and training services to 250 member companies in the manufacturing area. She also was recruited to become a professor. At the time, it was Meyer University. It was formerly Dyke College, where she was an assistant professor for management and section head for operations. She also began a consulting company, and she assisted companies all the way from training right on the shop floor, all the way up to the executive suite. She also wanted to give back to her community of Brooklyn. She could have lived really anywhere, but chose to stay in the home that her dad built here in Brooklyn. And she became a very active volunteer at St. Thomas More, including serving on their finance committee. She served on the Brooklyn High School Hall of Fame committee, which she was inducted into that. When we had the Brooklyn Animal Shelter, she served as vice president. She was a fundraiser, volunteer, walked dogs, wrote grants. She did some pro bono work for the city of Brooklyn on market research. This was before she was on council, and that was a big initiative that she led for the city. She later became a member of our Economic Development Committee and then was appointed to council. She was a very thoughtful and hardworking member of council, and she believed very strongly that she represented the residents of Brooklyn and strived to make decisions in their best interest. I appreciate her service and also her friendship. And there was one quote that one of her former classmates from Brooklyn High School said, and that was, this is a quote, "Heaven has now become much more intelligent with Deb in our Lord's presence." So may she rest in peace, and my sympathy to her family. I did see the story and read the article about the situation, and I'm sure it'll be addressed here tonight. I did want to just clarify one thing that was in the article, and I understand that, in talking to reporters, not everything gets included, but and that was that we built the station and purchased a ladder truck for regionalization. We built the station because the old station could no longer meet our needs, and it was also not safe because fire apparatus over the years has become much heavier, and the apparatus floor was not really designed to handle the load. And anyone who's been around at all knows that the fire station was in very, very bad shape. At the same time, our old ladder was also at the end of its useful life. We did participate in a study of regionalization that was conducted by Baldwin Wallace, and while it initially did show some promise, Brooklyn is the only west side suburb that borders Cleveland, technically on two sides, but the other side is Lyndale, so it really is effectively bordering Cleveland on three sides. And so we're not really positioned very well geographically for regionalizing our safety forces, just because we don't want to lose those fast response times. That study showed some promise in the beginning, but in the end, it was not successful. One of the outcomes was they had these crazy formulas that were going to dramatically increase staffing, and it just did not move forward. We built the station and purchased the new ladder for the protection and safety of our residents, our community, and our firefighters. Now, one of the added benefits of having a new station and a new ladder would be that if the regionalization did succeed, because of us having a modern station and a new ladder, there would be no doubt that we would definitely be one of the stations or one of the communities that would have an open station that was operational, and that would definitely be in our best interest. Regarding the staffing issue, I did have a very good conversation with the chief, and I appreciate your time. I know that this is really a tough subject, and it's so complex because it is, of course, impacted by our current collective bargaining agreement. And while I know that, there are some changes that could help us, I don't know if we're going to be able to accomplish those in the future or not. I know that, when we go out on a call, for the engine, we need 4 people and then 2 on the squad. So I know that we've experimented with, sometimes one person driving a ladder and one person driving an ambulance, but then you can end up in a dilemma where if you need that ambulance, then the person who drove the ladder then has to help on the ambulance. The ladder also takes more than 2 people to operate. So this is a very complex issue. I know that the Hampton Inn fire, I don't believe it came in as a confirmed structure fire until we had already left the station. And the rest of the logistics I'll leave to the chief, along with the fact that I know that some of his remarks were edited out when he was speaking on the interview about when our ladder is used. I do want to talk a little bit about our staffing, though. Quite a while ago, we were fully staffed at 10 per shift. Then we hit the Great Recession. We did look at the possibility of laying off. We avoided that by using attrition through not replacing those who retired. And that included eliminating the position of an assistant chief who was very close to retirement anyway. We also had the situation with American Greetings deciding to leave. We were confident that eventually we would recover a good amount of that income tax from the property, but the unknown was how long it was going to take. Since then, we really have been kicking this issue down the road. I know we talk about it through every budget cycle. Do we have enough people? Another thing that helped us was AG delayed their departure while they took the company from public to private. So we did benefit from collecting their income tax longer than we anticipated. And then once they did leave, we were fortunate that we have been able to fill a good portion of that property with good jobs. The biggest factor in that was that the economy remained very strong. We also had a motivated new owner, and then of course the city had to offer incentives to bring those jobs here. From there, we encountered COVID and all those uncertainties, and we weathered that storm, and we have used our COVID funding to offset the salaries of our safety forces. So now our obstacle is the impact on our income tax of the work from home people, because effective in 2021, they can now file for a refund, and in some cases going forward, they could be paying their withholding to their home community, not necessarily Brooklyn. And I guess one thing that I've learned from this whole saga is that I think there's always going to be something that we're facing, something that, it's either an uncertainty or an obstacle. And certainly the most recent ones with the pandemic and all those effects are very unusual and nothing that anyone could have anticipated. I do think we've reached the point that we really need to stop kicking this down the road, and I do think we need to figure out the best way forward, the possibility of adding a person to each shift. I know that our finance director provided us with some estimates and a recommendation. I will tell you that I personally disagree with asking the taxpayers for additional funds for this. Percentage-wise, I realize that we cut things close and we have some uncertainties, but percentage-wise, it's not a huge portion of our budget. And I'd like to make sure that this year when we start talking about our budget for next year, that we take a very serious look at this and try and figure out a way, even if we try and phase them in. Now, is that going to answer all of our problems? No. Are we ever going to be up to 10 people per shift? Probably not anywhere in the near future. And it's also not going to always eliminate the possibility that we won't be able to man the ladder. But I do think it'll help. And I just want to make sure that we take a good hard look at it and try and make that happen. And that completes my report. Thank you.
Mr. Borowski.
First of all, I would like to send my condolences to the family of former Councilwoman Debbie Tomosco. I never got the opportunity to meet her, but from what I've heard from a lot of the people in the community, a wonderful woman. So my prayers are with her family. I'd like to personally thank City Council and the Mayor for the support and the encouragement for the passing and adoption of the resolution 2 weeks ago denouncing the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. And I'd also like to send a big thank you to Mr. Feduk from the United Ukrainian Organizations of Ohio for coming and accepting the resolution on behalf of the community. And I'd also like to, which I know Andy's going to touch up on this a little bit as well, we walked around Summer Lane and Kennedy this past week, and we dropped off surveys because there's a lot of sitting water between and on the properties, water retention issues. So we're hoping to get the community together after they filled out the surveys and possibly work together to come up with a solution. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Mr. Tansky.
Thank you. Good evening. I would like to offer my sincerest condolences to the family and friends of Debbie Tomosco, who passed away on March 18th. Debbie was a longtime Brooklyn resident, who was a strong supporter and active member in our community, and also served on City Council. She had many friends. She will be missed. I just have a couple questions over to Mr. Butler on the electricity going to be supplied by CEI into the new building, City Hall. What is the reason, and I know it's the lawsuit we're going back to, if CPP was to go in there and the lawsuit didn't go their way, then we go to CEI. What is the difference with CEI being in there, and if the lawsuit doesn't go their way, we can possibly go to CPP?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Councilman, I don't necessarily want to get into any legal strategy with respect to the lawsuit, but I will say what I said earlier in committee, which is that the litigation between primarily CEI and CPP, and we're sort of caught in the middle because we are the commercial customer at the heart of that litigation, has gone back from the Supreme Court of Ohio to the trial court, where additional hearings and litigation must occur. We're anticipating that there could be an appeal from the next trial court decision to at least the 8th District Court of Appeals, and then potentially back to the Supreme Court of Ohio. So there could be years more of litigation over this issue with respect to whether or not Cleveland Public Power is permitted by Constitution to sell to commercial customers outside the city of Cleveland borders. CEI's argument is that they're not. CPP's argument, of course, is that they are. We have generally allied with CPP in that litigation. We are a commercial customer of CPP with respect to some of our buildings, but we didn't want to enter into a long-term agreement, which is what CPP had proposed for the new police and city hall building while that litigation was still pending. So we entered into a short-term agreement with CEI that gets the site, construction site, and the building powered while the litigation continues to be waged. And once that litigation concludes, we can evaluate our options again at that point. But we won't have the disadvantage, if the litigation does not wind up going our way, of being in a long-term agreement with an entity that we're not permitted by law to be in that agreement with. So that's the chief concern, Councilman.
Being that CEI entered into a long-term or a short-term agreement, CPP, I'm sure, knew that. They wouldn't back down and do the same thing?
That's not what they had proposed for us. They had proposed a long-term agreement, which was in line with the agreement that we've entered with respect to other commercial buildings on Memphis Avenue, other city buildings on Memphis Avenue. Yeah.
And I don't know if you can answer this, it might be to the mayor. The microgrids, is CEI just as friendly with those microgrids as CPP?
I would have to let the county answer that question. You know, we're not going to be an operator of the county's utility at all. We may not be a customer of the county's utility. What is before our council is whether or not it's to permit the county utility to be in the city and operate in the city. That's really the decision that's before you. So I would have to defer to the county on that. Anecdotally, I will tell you, Councilman, that what we've heard, and I think what we heard at the last committee meeting on the subject, was that the county utility probably has a better working relationship with CPP than it does with CEI.
I could chime in on that. The actual answer is CEI is not approved by PUCO right now to have the microgrids. They'd have to go to PUCO in order to provide microgrids.
CEI.
CEI would. So the answer to your question is no.
And to refresh my mind here, those microgrids we're going to currently start on Teton, am I correct? Up towards those companies up in that direction?
Right now they're talking to One American Road.
All right, to this table over here now. Mr. Jagabruzzi, this roof, how long do you think that this pole, and I know we don't know until they can see what they can do on top, that it will be down? What is your estimated factor? Have they told you anything?
I can't estimate that. Again, beyond April 30th is our best estimate right now until we get some further information this week. So I would say at least April 30th is kind of what I'm cautiously.
Thank you, Mrs. Ranshocky.
Thank you. While we may not yet know what district Brooklyn residents will be voting in for the next 4 or 10 years, it's important to know that as it stands, the primary is supposed to take place on May 3rd. This means that 1 week from today, Monday, April 4th, is the deadline to register to vote or to update your registration to vote in the 2022 primaries. You can confirm your registration easily online by visiting https://voterlookup.ohiosos.gov. While our leaders in Columbus continue to draw fair districts that voters asked for in 2015 and 2018, I encourage you to do your part by checking to ensure that your voter registration is both current and accurate. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Selhurst.
Thank you. My condolences also to the family and friends of Deborah Tomosco. She'll be missed. On Friday the 18th, I was out with Darnella Robertson of First Energy and Richard Martin from Cleveland Public Power. One of the issues we had with the LED project was to actually try to determine on Ridge Road going northbound who actually has the street lights, who they're responsible for. We finally got that resolved. Should have been a simple thing, took forever, but it's done. As Councilman Borowski mentioned, he and I were out last Tuesday to the residences with adjoining backyards in Summer and Kennedy. We dropped off letters that contained the survey. We'll follow up in a few weeks, see how many have replied. We'll probably do another walk through there just to get the people that haven't replied, try to get them to reply yet. Once the survey is done, and that there is a deadline of April 30th, we'll try to have a public neighborhood meeting out in the neighborhood to actually get participation in this and try to get that resolved as well. And thank you to Kelly Crawl for your remarks regarding Manoa. That concludes my report.
Excuse me, may I add something that I forgot to address Mrs. Crawl? Can we just have a meeting, a special meeting, so that the residents, whether we do the residents of Manoa and then the residents in the other two areas, or whether we combine them? I really don't think for something as important like this that we can solely rely on digital communication. I mean, I think we have to respect that not everybody, communicates digitally. And I just think we just have to have a meeting. This is such an important issue for these residents who live here. We would feel the same way, where we would want, all of our questions addressed and an opportunity to have a conversation, rather than trying to find information on a website and read it. So I would suggest that we find a way to have a meeting and have an in-person dialogue with the people in these impacted areas. And I also want to stress that no decisions have been made. I think you do know that, but I certainly understand being in your situation, how you feel, and that it has to be fearful about what's going to happen in the future. So I think we just need to have a meeting. Thank you.
If I remember right from the last meeting, I mentioned the Summer Kennedy meeting, the neighborhood meeting. I believe the mayor also mentioned of having a meeting out in Manoa, so it's already been addressed.
Very good. Yes, and I am in complete agreement with that. I was actually going to suggest something of that nature, whether it was through the administration doing it in the neighborhood, or if we were to run it through one of our committees, probably the Public Safety Environmental Committee. But yeah, I mean, they're always happy to answer questions as much as we possibly can. So I'll work with the mayor this week to find out which way we're going to go, whether the administration wants to take care of it in the community, or if we want to have something here.
Okay.
And then, of course, we would notify whatever we decide to do. Yep. Okay, Mayor.
You didn't have something. So I'm excited to announce, you probably saw in the last newsletter, we are having a Memorial Day parade. It's been a couple of years. I think it's just one of those events in our city that people just really enjoy and get to see each other, but also the most important is honoring those people that have served our country and have made the ultimate sacrifice. So just giving a shout out to make sure that if you want to participate in the parade in that remembrance and honor, please reach out to the Recreation Department at 216-351-5334, Rachel, the secretary over there, is organizing everything. This is her first year doing it. She'll be sending out the letters following in the footsteps of Tina Westfall, who organized it in the past, to all those who have participated. But if you are interested and haven't participated, we encourage you to reach out to our rec department. Also, going along with Memorial Day, we had a resident shoot us an email about flags. You know, it's been terrible weather for the past few weeks. It's very windy. We often have this issue with city flags. They tear up easily. I know Ron just dropped 2 flags off from his church. Now's a good time to take a look at them and order some new flags. And we do have a disposal right here at City Hall. It's a old postal box. You could dispose of those flags, and we'll make sure that they go to the proper place, and they just don't get thrown in the garbage. I want to welcome Nick Kuntz, our newest firefighter that I swore in last week. And then also welcome Patrick Lang as our new housing manager, who will start this Friday. I'm going to address the zoning. Ms. Krall, thanks for coming again and speaking. I want to make sure I hit all of your stuff, so if I don't, please come see me after the meeting. I try to write everything down. So the timeline, I think, you know, when you start a project, you put a timeline together hoping that you can accomplish a project in a certain period of time, and it just inevitably doesn't happen. Our timeline from that original point has been expanded just because it has been, we knew this project was going to be a lot of work, and it has been a lot of work, but much more than we even anticipated. So we don't even anticipate having anything on the ballot until May of next year. So I realize that your hesitation is you feel like it's immediate, and maybe that's something I should have said at the last meeting and I didn't think about it. So we do have a lot of time. Our next public meeting's in June, and I did mention at the last meeting I would certainly have no problem with meeting with residents of that area. I know Aaron has offered to go door to door in the meantime to those residents in the area, but we would like to have something, have a particular meeting for residents in the Ridge Road area as well as Manoa. Again, no decisions have been made. This has really been a conversation. You go through, when you work in the government, and I'm sure you're appreciative of working in the school board, you understand how the sausage is made, and sometimes it's the chicken or the egg theory, right? How do you start a conversation and talk about things and get the input from your legislative body? If it's not even a relevant conversation to have in the public yet, there's no reason to make people scared or in fear if you don't even have the support of the legislative body even to consider it. So that was really a call out to them saying, hey, what do you think about these areas? Are these conversations that we should continue having, or should we just X off totally from further conversations? So again, we will reach out. I can get you a copy of the fall newsletter if you still want it. We do usually, when we update the newsletter, just put the newest version on the website. You mentioned something about the letter that was sent out by Mr. Slattery to the residents of that area addressing zoning changes. I did not know about that letter even when you spoke. I was not aware of that until afterwards. I had talked to Aaron, and he mentioned it since he lives in that area. I did ask for a copy of it from a resident that lives in that area because I had never even seen it. I can't address something that I didn't have knowledge that was even in existence. So that I hope that covers that for you. And I think I covered everything. Again, I have been telling Jeremy Rowan, who's our city lead on this project, feedback. He did have some aspects he was working on for communication pieces as well as meeting pieces with our zoning coordinator. He's been on vacation for the last 2 weeks, so I will catch up with him again tomorrow to see where all that is at. I knew I had something else. Oh, fire department. So I put a long spreadsheet out to City Council about this fire staffing we do talk about staffing levels with all the directors when we go through budget and capital process in the fall. And fire staffing actually never really came up in the budget work session from City Council. One member mentioned it in capital, but it wasn't brought up when we were going through operating. But I had put together the bulk of this information for that time, thinking it may come up, and it did not. So I was able to send out some staffing levels and some historic look-backs of things and some union aspects that I think is important with the CBA that kind of hinders the city from doing certain things. And a couple of those things are 3 members of the fire department per shift are allowed to take off on vacation or comp time per day. And this was fine when we had a staffing level of 10 per shift. We haven't had a staffing level of 10 per shift since before 2010. So that worked. And it's one of those things that we bring up every union negotiation. And of course, the firefighters do not want to lose an extra day off. So, you know, if we can get that down to 2 per shift where it would match what our current staffing levels are, that would be of help. Also, in the contract, Article 33 allows our firefighters to drop their paramedic license when we have 15 staffed and they've been serving for at least 15 years. So the pay differential is very small. And so what happens, as soon as I hire somebody, I have a senior member drop their medic license. And so we have about 7 more who are able to do this under our current contract. As of 2013, anybody who's hired after that point cannot drop their medic license. But when you're shifting dynamics in a fire station over the course of the last several years, our medic calls have gone up and our fire calls have gone down. So the bulk of the services that are provided to the city through medic, a portion of my staff aren't doing those particular calls. Now they're basic EMTs, but they're not certified paramedics any longer. They dropped that license. And so this is something historically that was put in the contract a long time ago and worked out of the contract with the new hires, but it's something we have to live with. So the fire chief is tasked with making sure we have enough paramedics per shift, and he has to divvy that up. So we make sure that we're providing our core service, which is going on to the ambulance. So overall, we've seen over the last 5 years, those medic calls go up. Meanwhile, there's 7 members of our staff that aren't performing that 70% of the work. And so it becomes difficult, and those are one of the contract hindrances we have to live with. Overall, calls have remained static over the last 5 or 6 years. As far as actual structure fires, so let me give you a range of the last 6 years of fire calls. We have anywhere between 845 and 987 of fire calls. Of those fire calls, between 9 and 15 have been actual structure fires. So just because something's classified as a fire call doesn't mean it's an actual something's burning right now. And so I'll give you an example. Something that would maybe classify as a fire call is a false alarm, which have gone up actually over the last several years, as well as an EMS assist. So if someone gets in a car accident, the EMS or the squad goes out, paramedics are out there working on that person if they've been injured, and then we'll have a fire truck come along as an assist. Well, that assist is considered a fire call. And so it gets confusing. So as our medic calls are going up and our accidents may go up, so you'll see fire calls go up too because the assists have gone up over the last 5 years as well. So also, but when we look at fire calls as opposed to who's being transported to the hospital, that really hasn't changed. The number of people who are being transported to the hospital is actually going down, meaning our number of medic calls are going up and transports are being the same. So it really becomes an education piece of that, or just a resident safety. If an older person, say, falls and we're picking someone else up just to help them fall, but they say, no, we don't need to go to the hospital. We're seeing more of that. And so as our population grows older, this is part of our job and we're here to do that, and the fire department's happy to do that, but they're not going necessarily to the hospital for every single call. And then one of the core components that the finance director and I look at, and for every department, is really comparisons and comparables, and not only in salary scales, but also work performed. So we do this across the board when we're looking at the service department or the police department. It's what are the calls per firefighter? So this is data that the chief provided early on. And so we took a look at that range. So right now, we have about 459 calls per firefighter. So we're right in the middle. We have cities that are underneath us, like Fairview Park or Independence, but we have cities that have more calls, like Middleburg Heights, and ours is 459 per call, so theirs is 680 per firefighter per call. So they serve a lot more people, their firefighters serve a lot more calls than our firefighters. So we're right in the range. So knowing that we're in somewhere in the mid-range, it's a good tool for us to look at if our staffing level is appropriate. Again, we have looked at some of the things that are impacting us with this COVID. People being out with COVID, they're out for 2 weeks, that can impact staffing levels. Hopefully that we see a decrease with that, as well as part-timers. Part-timers are harder to come by, and so this is something that we have to build in, and hopefully that becomes better. Our police or our fire chief is a trainer for paramedics, so he's probably in the best space to recruit part-timers. And also we give points to part-timers who work for us for when we go to hire. So we try to see what they could do as a part-timer, and hopefully those are the people that we can recruit to our department later on. And then I know Mrs. Pucci mentioned one of the core issues right now that we're faced. We had a few job approvals that were on for this current budget that I put on hold. And that was mainly because we don't know what work from home is going to look like. We're all kind of a wait and see approach. And we're seeing some decline in some of our biggest taxpayers. And some we're seeing, okay, they seem to remain steady. But the key indicator is going to be is our residents who are working from their business here, but working from home, where are they going to file, and if they're going to ask for some of those income taxes back. So we have to see, and this is really that period of time over the next couple of months that we hope to have a clearer picture. As well as, we talked about American Greetings and Loss, and I think that this administration and City Council has done a terrific job of recruiting a lot of good businesses to replace One American Road. And it's just not the same type of payroll that we had with American Greetings, and nor do we ever think it was going to get as high as that. But I think that we had to face reality when we look at their last year. They brought in $4.5 million in taxes to this community. Versus last year, the businesses all together in One American Road brought $2.3 million in overall taxes. Additional comparison is with American Greetings. We had no incentives. We've incentivized these businesses to come here. Not all of them, but a good handful of them. So we have to pay out those incentive agreements. So we're not in the same ballpark as we were pre-American Greetings, and we have to do that. We cannot budget on non-reoccurring revenue. We had a really great year last year. I think we were all surprised internally about how much non-reoccurring revenue or net profit we received. However, we cannot bank on that. We cannot budget on that. So we have to look at our reoccurring revenue, and that's how we decide staffing levels. So I've talked to the chief. I feel like we are in a good place. Our staffing hasn't changed over the last 5 years. He feels like in a good place. Would he like more people? Yes. If I asked every director here if you would like more staffing, they will say yes, I promise you. We did run analysis on hiring 3 more staff with a mill increase. That is not the administration's recommendation, though. I think that I've made that clear in my write-up with City Council. I do feel like there needs to be more conversations with the union, and we can certainly do that. If we are going to look at anything, it would be in conjunction with other moves. And as well as, you don't get to just hire 1 staff member and it can make a difference. You need to hire 3 staff members. It has to be 1 per shift to see any critical difference in service levels or any critical difference in budget levels. So that's just really the bottom line. I think I covered it all.
You got it.
Okay, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me, 216-635-4221.
Additionally, council, the mayor sent that report out that she was referring to, so I would recommend that you read through that and then get back to the mayor if any of your suggestions or ideas on that. So thank you, Mayor, for that explanation. All right, we'll now move on to reports of our directors. We'll start with Mr. Raguse.
Thank you very much. Just 2 items for me tonight. Regarding resolution number 2022-12, approving the construction budget and authorizing the execution of the gross maximum price amendments for the city center project. So the gross maximum price, what this legislation does is increase the gross maximum price by about $700,000. I want city council and the audience to have 3 takeaways from this piece of legislation or from the project overall. The first piece is that this increase of $700,000 will either be paid by contingencies already budgeted for, or will be paid by the cost share that we're getting from the sewer district of $303,500. So it's, in essence, it's already been either budgeted or paid for. The second item is that it does not increase the overall budget as recently approved by City Council of $26.4 million, just under $26.4 million. So that number has not changed. Also, the last item is that this does not take into account any potential demolition money that we're still waiting to hear back from in the amount of $425,000 that may further reduce our costs as it relates to the city center project. So that's the first item. The second item is that the February financial report is on board docs, and I will provide a brief overview of the general fund financial report through February. So overall, the revenues are 16% of the estimated amount. Overall, income taxes are overall revenues are 34% less than prior year due to a decrease of income taxes of $1.1 million. Much of this decrease in income taxes is due to a decrease of one-time non-recurring revenue from net profit that we received last year that the mayor just touched on. We don't budget. This is not reoccurring revenue, so therefore we do not budget this. We received a substantial amount last year that we did not expect. We have not seen this come in so far through the first 2 months of this year. So the other items are included in my memo, but the majority of the reason for the decrease in income taxes is related to the non-recurring revenue that we received last year and have not received so far this year. On the bottom half of the income statement, on the commitment side, overall commitments are 31% of the budget amount. And are also 5% more as compared to February of last year. Overall, the general fund finished with an unencumbered fund balance of $14.2 million, which is a $2.2 million decrease from where we started the year off. On the income tax revenue, so we received our distributions from RITA for March. It was basically very similar to prior March distribution. It was $5,000 less than last year. Excluding the one-time or non-recurring revenue, we were $49,000 less than March of 2021. We were down $67,000 in withholding from March of last year. As the mayor mentioned, we've realized a lower amount in withholding from our larger businesses this year so far than we received last year. So that's something that we've discussed that we'll keep an eye out on, and one of the reasons why we're not filling the new positions that we budgeted for in 2022. And that concludes my report. Are there any questions from City Council? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. That's all we have for director's reports, I believe.
Mr. Anker, I just forgot to add something. I thought the fire chief would do a report, but today he informed me that we got our ISO rating, and again, it was 2, which makes us in the top 7% nationwide, so congratulations on that work. If you don't know, with the ISO rating, it's Insurance Service Office, and so what they measure is 50% of that measurement comes from staffing levels, training, and proximity to firehouses for our community. 40% comes from the availability of water supply, including the prevalence of fire hydrants and how much water is available to help put out fires. 10% comes from the quality of the area's emergency communication system, and 5.5% comes from community outreach, including fire prevention and safety courses. So terrific that we were able to obtain that rating. I know he's looking to get into the number 1, which will make you in the top 2%. Thank you.
Very good. Congratulations. That's awesome. Very good. All right, now move on with our legislation for this evening. The first item we have is a grant award for the 2022 Preventative Maintenance Funding Program. It's a total of $55,000, $17,500 for crack sealing on bid off, and $37,500 for pavement and resurfacing and base repair on Tiedemann from 480 to Brook Park. All right, so as a notification to council, so that work will be done sometime, I would imagine, this spring. Next up is Ordinance 2022-6, amending various sections of the ordinances of the City of Brooklyn in order to update provisions and regulations with respect to the building department. Additional comments or questions? Right. Introduced by all, suspend the rules.
Second.
To suspend the rules, Kathy Pucci,
Yes.
Aaron Borowski,
Yes.
Kevin Tansky,
Yes.
Ron Van Kirk,
Yes.
Meg Ryan Shaki,
Yes.
Andy Selhertz.
Yes.
To adopt, Kathy Pucci,
Yes.
Aaron Borowski,
Yes.
Kevin Tansky,
Yes.
Ron Van Kirk,
Yes.
Meg Ryan Shaki,
Yes.
Andy Selhertz.
Yes.
The next two ordinances are on second reading, authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with the West Creek Conservancy for the sale and purchase of vacant City of Brooklyn land bank property on Road. That's parcel number 432-21-038 for $1. Ordinance 2022-8, amending section 133.03, moral claims of the codified ordinances to provide for the resolution of moral claims. Under new business this evening, this item is on first reading, resolution 2022-10, agreeing to allow Cuyahoga County to operate a public utility in the City of Brooklyn pursuant to its powers under the state of Ohio and the laws established by the government of Cuyahoga County. Resolution 22-11 is on first reading but hope to pass by suspension of the rules. That is authorizing the mayor to enter an agreement with Simvey LLC to provide information technology professional services to the City of Brooklyn. And this is at a cost of $7,916.50 per month. And it says zero increase from last year.
Introduce up by all to suspend the rules.
Second.
To suspend the rules, Kathy Pucci,
Yes.
Aaron Borowski,
Yes.
Kevin Tansky,
Yes.
Ron Van Kirk,
Yes.
Meg Ryan Shaki,
Yes.
Andy Selhertz.
Yes.
To adopt, Kathy Pucci,
Yes.
Aaron Borowski,
Yes.
Kevin Tansky,
Yes.
Ron Van Kirk,
Yes.
Meg Ryan Shaki,
Yes.
Andy Selhertz.
Yes.
Resolution 2022-12 is on first reading but hope to pass by suspension of the rules. Amending Resolution 2021-35, approving of a construction budget and authorizing execution of a guaranteed maximum price amendment for the City Center project and declaring emergency. This is the item that our City Center team was here to discuss at this committee of the whole meeting. I discussed it during my report, and Mr. Raguse just gave a more thorough explanation during his. Any comments or questions?
Introduced by all to suspend the rules.
Second.
To suspend the rules, Kathy Pucci,
Yes.
Aaron Borowski,
Yes.
Kevin Tansky,
Yes.
Ron Van Kirk,
Yes.
Meg Ryan Shaki,
Yes.
Andy Selhertz.
Yes.
To adopt, Kathy Pucci,
Yes.
Aaron Borowski,
Yes.
Kevin Tansky,
Yes.
Ron Van Kirk,
Yes.
Meg Ryan Shaki,
Yes.
Andy Selhertz.
Yes.
Ordinance 2022-9 is on first reading, establishing the One Ohio Opioid Litigation Settlement Fund within the City of Brooklyn. Lastly is Ordinance 2022-10 is on first reading, but hope to pass by suspension of the rules, authorizing the updated capital improvement plan for 2022. And this is enabling us to purchase the Citizen Serve Building Department software so for our service department for $21,600, as was discussed in my report in Committee of the Whole.
Introduced by all to suspend the rules.
Second.
To suspend the rules, Kathy Pucci,
Yes.
Aaron Borowski,
Yes.
Kevin Tansky,
Yes.
Ron Van Kirk,
Yes.
Meg Ryan Shaki,
Yes.
Andy Selhertz.
Yes.
To adopt, Kathy Pucci,
Yes.
Aaron Borowski,
Yes.
Kevin Tansky,
Yes.
Ron Van Kirk,
Yes.
Meg Ryan Shaki,
Yes.
Andy Selhertz.
Yes.
That is all we have on our agenda this evening. Does the mayor, anyone else on council, the directors have anything to add?
Motion adjourned.
Second.
To adjourn, Kathy Pucci,
Yes.
Aaron Borowski,
Yes.
Kevin Tansky,
Yes.
Ron Van Kirk,
Yes.
Meg Ryan Shaki,
Yes.
Andy Selhertz.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. Have a blessed evening.
You too.